actually, ironically, sold cars in Germany. This interview should be up shortly. If you haven't already checked out the interview that I did with Bella Group, that's already live. So it is on our YouTube channel. So definitely check it out. But here we go.
To Germany, and I signed up to become a trainee salesperson under a guy's name where we were selling cars into the US military who were based in Germany.
Okay.
So we were selling Chrysler, Harley Davidson, Honda, General Motors, Jeep into the US military. So the US military guys, would be based in Germany or based where they are in the world. And we would have a car lot on base. For anyone who's in the military will know that it's 80s. And with that, if they bought a car from us, they could drive it in Europe, or if they were going back home, we would sell them a car, and Chrysler would have the car waiting for them at the dealership. And I did that. It was like, we would sell the cars, we would sell Zebra, if anyone remembers Zebra, extended warranties. And that in itself was, for me, the most amazing time that I ever had. Like, I would travel all over Germany. We went down into Macedonia, up onto observational towers with troops.
So that's a segment of the interview. If you are interested in how people sell cars to U.S. military members in Germany, it's really interesting. Ironically, he then tried to sell cars in Dublin, Ireland. After selling cars in Germany, they said, "Oh, you don't have any experience in Ireland, so you shouldn't be selling cars in Ireland because you don't know how to do that because you only sold cars in Germany." Anyway, here we go.
Hey, are you Ian Nethercott, the host of the AutoHub show?
War is tough, but peace is about thinking ahead of the challenges and getting it done.
There are lots of experts in automotive who talk about the problems. The AutoHub show is all about solutions. Ready for the solutions? Let's get this masterclass started live right now.
If you look at the last 4 years, Ian, we've answered 41 million phone calls for dealers over the last 4 years with our AI platform. We've also handled over 150 million text messages. And so when you look at just those raw numbers, that's a 4-to-1, 3.5, 4-to-1 text to phone call. So I don't know. Here's what I can tell you, though. I believe that the customer wants to be met where they are presently. If that is text, voice, video call, if they want to be engaged and engaged instantly.
I've been fortunate enough to be using Numa since square one, but my opinion, I like to meet the customers where they are, because if I choose my preference in terms of how I want to communicate with people, I'm going to eliminate a large portion of my potential customers. The customer calls in from the outside. There doesn't have to be a person on the other side of the conversation, and it will be a transcribed, recorded transcription of the message, which is important, and it's real time, 365 days a year. So we don't lose anything. The customers that prefer the phone and the customers that prefer the text may be two different people, but the nice thing about like Numa as an example is you got both of those people in one spot.
Hey, I'm Vince Delmonico, General Sales Manager with Cruise Ford Lincoln. Larry Feldman came out and did one of our training courses. Absolutely incredible. I sat through the course myself. The engagement that our salespeople gained from it, the excitement that he brings, it was a new way of looking at things that we're already doing and how we can improve them. Love it. It's literally the best thing since sliced bread.
The automotive industry is a very capital intensive business, and general managers are taught and come through the runs in the automotive industry and really understand the business. They understand their metrics, they understand their KPIs. But very much like the previous two speakers have just mentioned, what they don't do, because there really isn't a school to do it in, what they don't really do is really invest in learning not only how to invest in a car dealership and buy a car dealership, but more importantly, how do you exit once you buy in a car dealership? How are you going to return the maximum return on your capital? And is a car dealership the best way to invest? Most general managers that get into the car dealership business basically put all their money into it and then hope that sweat equity and profitability rises and increases their ownership of that business. One of the things when we're lending money to general managers that are looking to buy in, I was a bit surprised actually, or how few general managers truly understood the financial structure of getting into a business and investing.
Meta, Instagram, social, and your team is still waiting for ups like it's 1999. Let's be honest, your market isn't watching TV commercials, they're double tapping and engaging with your competitors on social media posts. People are shopping these days for cars and servicing their vehicles in between watching cat videos. That's where we can help. Retail Resilient is the go-to authority for social selling in the car industry. Whether you're a new car franchise dealer, an independent, a buy here, pay here, a broker, a dealership owner or manager, we have something for you. Remember, when your lot is quiet, it means your social media is not loud enough. Check us out at retailresilient.com so we can retarget you on our social media feeds.
One second, here we go. All right. Well, we've got a great panel of experts here this morning to really talk a little bit about trimming the fat and getting ready to pivot in 2026. I was talking to Peter a little bit earlier, talking about the fact that the Chinese are now going to beat Toyota to solid state. So that was kind of interesting, being that Toyota has really hung their hat on solid state being the future of electric. But let's start with Mike, since he was the first guy on, so he's up first. Please introduce yourself, Mike, and answer the following question. What's the best place to start cutting in 2026, in your opinion?
My name is Mike Eagle. I am president of Eagle Dealer Services Group. And where to start cutting expenses in 2026 is to make expense control understood that we need to eliminate preventable loss. Mistakes internally are a huge hidden cost in dealerships. Many dealerships automatically go into the month accounting for 2% of policy adjustments, which for the most part, these adjustments are not goodwill adjustments. For the most part, these adjustments are covering mistakes that associates make. If mistakes don't affect compensation, they continue to happen. In my stores, associates sign a document when they onboard, acknowledging that if they make a mistake, that they're paying for it, that it doesn't go to policy, and it doesn't go to gross, it goes to their compensation. And you'd be amazed at how many fewer mistakes occur when that happens. So, the biggest way to cut expenses is my stores don't have policy. The money goes from two places. Either goes directly from the comp of the associate, or it gets charged to gross in the department. And that would be if we were doing something that was goodwill, which usually is not necessary, because if we don't make a mistake, we don't need to pay for goodwill.
Fantastic. Mr. Larry, the one and the only, what do you think? Having been an ex-dealer yourself, when you started a year, what did you think was the best place to start? And what do you think as we go into 2026?
Well, first of all, Mike, it's nice to meet you. And I'd like to see if we can get you to work that deal with Congress, where if they make a mistake, they have to pay for it themselves. Might make my country a little healthier. What I used to do at the beginning of each year was have everybody write down what they thought their role was. Not what I thought their role was, what they did. Because, Michael, I will probably agree with this. It's amazing how much miscommunication there is between what the owner of the dealership thinks the people are supposed to do and what they think they're supposed to do. So if you start with what is your lane, what is your area of responsibility, that's a good way to start. And it's just important to have meetings, not the usual stupid meetings that go on too long and have no topic. Mike, I always liked one-on-one meetings because people react differently to you when it's just you and them. Mike, I once said to my guys, there was a rumor we were selling the store. And I said, listen, these rumors are nonsense. We're not selling. All your jobs are safe. And I walked around the corner and I heard one manager say to the other, he's firing all of us. So I think it's a matter of redefining roles, getting one-on-one meetings rather than these. I've never met any manager that thought meetings made any sense the way they're constructed. Right, Mike? I once said to a guy, I'll pay 100 cash. What do I got to do? just stand up in your manager's meeting and say, I don't think we've wasted enough time on this. Can we waste another 45 minutes? So redefining the roles, one-on-one meetings where they can really speak their mind without fear of looking silly or getting contradicted or like they're hurting anybody. And just having, specific design goals. I can tell you for a fact, Ian, when 5 guys said we're going to take care of it, that meant nobody was taking care of it. That's like having 5 different processes. It equates to none. If you can just define for people what you are responsible for, what you are expected for, and of course, how you'll be compensated, to what Mike was saying, if you do it right, as opposed to being penalized, I think we can get off, to the right direction. I think Peter is Mr. Clarity. He'll agree that clarity or lack thereof is usually the problem. How are you going to get mad at me when you didn't tell me what it is was expected of me or what the benchmarks were?
Fantastic. Peter, what do you think?
I think the biggest is really focusing on, if you want to save money and be more profitable, you really need, I think, to change some of the processes and focus on employee retention and building your teams. Because one of the things that I learned in last year, and I just wrote an article about it, which got a lot of exposure this weekend, talking about retention and keeping your employees happy. And like Larry was talking about, talking to your people, finding what's going on, investing the time to make sure people are happy and building your strong teams, because the amount of money it costs, and I know one of our guests, I think might be having trouble getting on because he's one of our guests that does recruiting, but a lot of things I learned was when you have to replace an employee, the money and the lost income that you lose in service and fixed ops, when you have a bay that's not being utilized properly because you don't have a technician in it, the amount of money, we're talking $25,000 to $30,000 a day, in gross revenues being generated. It's just devastating to the dealership's profitability. So we really need to do a better job of keeping our employees happy, keeping them on board, and building those teams.
Yeah,
Peter, if I could rebut that, I'm all for customers, dealers having terrible retention. My wife is currently looking at buying another vacation home, and just keep doing the dumb things you're doing. I need the money.
Yeah, I saw some posts on the weekend. They said, "Oh, we bought this new lift. Now we got to figure out if we could get a technician to work in it." And I'm sitting there going, "Is that something you figure out before you buy the lift?" So I thought that was hilarious. But more importantly, when you're looking at it, retention is something we've talked about in the show, I don't know, 7 years. So we've talked about it many, many times. But since we're coming up to NADA 2026, and we know dealers like to buy the newest, latest shiny bongo, whatever that might be, I think a great way to look at it as you go to NADA, if you're going as a dealer principal or as a general manager, is first of all, do an accounting of what it is that you're actually paying for now. Are you using it? And do you need new technology, or is it better to just streamline what you got now? I think what I see in dealers for many, many years is we got a bunch of technology. We're not quite sure what we're doing with it, but we're paying for it. And there was
Ian, what's the point of having technology when you have dealerships that don't do walkarounds, don't role play, don't make it mandatory to have service walks?
Well, I did a survey, which isn't complete yet, on LinkedIn over the weekend on where you're looking to cut. And the 2 areas were staff and adding technology or changing technology. Those are the 2 areas that are already the leaders. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, staff and overhead costs, and then technology and training were the two areas where they want to look at it. So I thought that was funny, being that if I have less staff, I've got to have people that are better trained. Because if there's less people to do things, those people that I do have actually have to know how to do more things or do things better. And I thought that was really interesting. The survey isn't complete yet, but I'm pretty confident we'll see a lot of stuff on the technology side, because dealers seem to think that AI is going to fix all their staffing problems, which I think is kind of humorous. But Mike, I mean, obviously when you're looking at NADA and you're looking at the fact that a whole bunch of dealers are going to Vegas, usually about 50, 60,000, what advice would you give to a dealer who's going to Vegas maybe to buy some technology or buy some products versus gambling, for example? Not that they don't do that in Vegas. I mean, what do you think?
For the most part, we are a people-to-people business, and the notion of having less people seems ridiculous. I would much prefer to have the people that I currently have, and like you say, make them better at what they do, and make them better what they do every day. And speaking of what I said previous, to make certain that we do one-on-one meetings so that we train them and guide them to be better every day, and then hire more people. You know, we went to we paid a visit this weekend to Venezuela, and we overwhelmed them like that, and not because the 200 soldiers that went there that we could have got away with 100. We needed every single one of them, and they were very highly trained. And if we could have every one of them, million people in the military that highly trained, we'd be that much further ahead of the game. And guess what? These strongest armies have the most people and the most highly trained people both. So those that are going there to spend money on technology, technology doesn't sell cars. People sell cars to people. People sell cars to people that say no when they start, and then they say yes when it's over, because the person is doing the selling builds value in the relationship, builds value in the dealership, builds value in the vehicle, and builds it makes that transactional, turns it into a relationship. Going to spend money on technology? Sure, there's always technology that helps. You know what? My wife totaled her car last week in Geico. I have to get Geico on the phone. And the Geico's got a lot of great technology. They got a lot more technology than any car dealership you'll ever find. Took me 8.5 minutes to get somebody in the total loss department on the phone, because my question to AI wasn't understood. Press 1, press 2, press 3, or throw your phone in the Atlantic Ocean. So more technology. Yeah, there's places where technology certainly is a benefit. Marketing digitally as opposed to mass marketing. That's a huge thing, because you know what? People aren't watching as much television and listening to much radio as they used to. They're streaming much more frequently. So that's technology, and certainly utilizing technology to determine where the best place to market is. And companies like Meta are going to tell you that. But I'm going to tell you that I never saw technology sell cars. Carvana stock is through the roof because all the Wall Street investment companies think that their technology for selling cars online, their algorithms is pristine, and it's going to have them take over the car dealership world. But I have a different opinion. I don't think that their technology is going to make that happen, because I think the car business is people selling cars to people.
100%.
Invest money. A computer's not going to do. Invest money and time in your people. Make them better at what they do, and make them want to be better. Make them want to have your job. Do something. I want to make sure that they want my job. I want less people. No, I want to overpay my people to make sure that they desperately want to keep that job, and that they're petrified that there's any chance in the world that they'll lose that job because they can't make that money anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching this interesting YouTube show on World War II, the Italy campaign. So there were tank divisions going against the Germans, and they were losing a bunch of tanks, and they weren't getting any ground. And all the leadership was like, "That's how we always do it with tanks. We go slow. The roads are bad. That's how you do it." So that there was a commander who happened to be on the Canadian side with I think it was the 5th Armor, and he said, "Well, that's clearly not working. So we should do something differently." They're like, "You're crazy." And he's like, "Well, why don't we go fast, and then that way we can get ahead of it, and they can't hit us." And all the leadership, whether from the British side or the other sides, were like, "Yeah, that's crazy." He ended up not only taking the objectives, he was able to do it with much less tanks and much less men dying. And it was interesting because it was counterintuitive, but it redefined tank warfare. And he was driving these things at 30 miles an hour on roads that were designed for like ox carts up mountains. But it was interesting because he actually looked at it differently. And I think in a lot of cases, people get sucked into technology, rightly or wrongly, and they say, "Hey, it's going to do stuff that we aren't doing now," versus what you're saying, which I agree with 100%. If we're going to have less specialists, if we're going to have less people involved in a car sale or in the service department or in fixing cars, we're going to have to get that much better. I mean, you wouldn't want to send a Navy SEAL in with no training to do a difficult operation. And that's also true when you're dealing with challenges in the car business. If anything, car deals today are more complicated than they've ever been, just because of price of vehicles, leasing versus financing, trade value, negative equity, a bunch of other things. And if you're saying that one guy or one gal is going to do it by themselves, that's crazy in some cases, especially if they don't have training. But what do you think, Peter?
Well, I got to talk a little bit about what Michael said, because I've been looking at all of the companies on the list of people that are going to be at NADA. They've got over 600 vendors, and I'm amazed at how many of them are talking about AI. They got AI this, AI that. Everybody's talking AI, and I've been doing a lot of research on the AI because I like AI, and it's a big benefit if you use it properly. But what I think that dealers have got to be aware of is AI is not going to typically replace staff. And if they go into NADA thinking they're going to replace staff with AI, they're making a mistake. There's a lot of great AI technology, but what I'm finding is a lot of the AI technology, because when I look at some of the vendors, I'll look at them and then I'll go do some deep research on them. They're pretty much taking and doing the same thing we've been doing for years with automation, okay, where we're doing triggering. If somebody does this, we're going to do this. If somebody does this, we're going to do that. So there are ways that AI can benefit, but at the end of the day, people sell cars. So I agree completely. So you're not going to replace the key people. You're not going to replace people in the service department with the service advisors and things like that with AI. You're going to still have to answer. You can answer certain questions when somebody calls in about what's going on with their car with AI. Oh, you hear this noise, blah, blah, blah. You still need to have people involved. So I think it's important that dealers look at NADA and these tools as what can assist my team to be more efficient, take some of the pressure off. And like one of the phone systems I was looking at will help take some of the pressure off the inbound calls for service appointment scheduling. That's a great tool. I love it because you don't need a service advisor taking calls, to schedule an appointment for service. You've got online technology, you've got AI that can do that for them. But when it comes to talking to the customer about what's wrong with their car, AI can't do that. So the dealers need to go in there with their minds positioned properly, where they're going to be, and let's face it, the companies they're got their top salespeople there, they got all the bells and whistles, and I hate seeing dealers go to NADA and get sold a bill of goods and think they're leaving NADA with these great ideas and great products, and next thing you know, 3 months later, that product is in the parts department on a shelf, not being utilized.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the many things that's really interesting is you look at AI. One of the sponsors show is Numa.ai, backed by Google, is that tool works with the team. It's not designed to replace the team. It's designed to augment the team. And I think that's really where AI makes a lot of sense. If you can make your team more efficient and do more with it, that's great. But the whole idea, as Camastro said on the show before, when we first got Numa, well, everyone thought they didn't have to answer phones anymore. That just is not the case. You still have to do your job. You're just doing it with help. What do you think, Larry?
Well, I'm going to dial into what you all said. First of all, you mentioned the Canadian general. The other guy that flipped that on its head was Patton. And what inevitably led to the end of Patton's career is what made him so successful. He cut through all the bureaucracy. He didn't have time for the nonsense and the craziness and all the things that usually, well, that's the way we've always done this, and that's our procedure. The second thing is what Mike was talking about. America has always believed in overwhelming force. But what you have to have is extremely focused, talented people up front. In the Civil War, we were at a standstill. We had a much bigger army and bigger force than the South. But they had Lee, and we had McClellan, who was interested in doing dinner parties and not being a general. So you need someone at the top that's smart, that's focused. If you don't have that, I think the only thing that rolls down the hill is horrible things. Because Mike, I just met you, so I'll tell a story I've told 12 million times, but it's true. I'm at the dealership, and for about 2 weeks, I wound up owning the place, but I'm there just as a salesperson, and the GM is leaving, and the operator says, "You have a call, boss." He says, "Tell him I left." Well, that scarred me for life, Mike. I have gotten deals. Ian always brags that I always answer my phone. Why should you get a gold star for answering your phone? Because we've devolved into a society where nobody answers their phone, and even though we have the most incredible forms of communication, you can't reach anybody. By the way, if anyone can't make a deal with Numa, I think they said they make 150 million texts. I have two 17-year-old girls can also do that.
Thanks for that, Larry. So where do you start? I mean, you're looking at a pile of bills, you're looking at staff, you're looking at a challenging year ahead. You're trying to make it all work. You're trying to balance that out.
Hey, Ian,
Yeah.
can I jump in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the key to that is try to focus on not what you did in 2025, but what you think you might have missed. No statement shows what you missed, the opportunities you missed, the growth you didn't hold. It only shows what you did. If you can try to focus on the potential that's out there and things you might have missed, I think you can really get a grip on being profitable.
100%. I mean, we had Ed on, and he was talking about mobile service, and he was saying that he has a 75 to 85% retention, depending on the vertical on service. And I know service is a huge opportunity always, but especially in 2026. But when you look at your average dealer website, actually, there was a post on the weekend of a guy saying he can clone it with AI. I said, why would you want to clone something that converts 5% of traffic? Why wouldn't you rethink why it's doing 5% before you start duplicating it? I mean, duplicating a bad recipe is probably not a good idea. What do you think, Mike?
I agree 100% about what we missed for the year. The gross profit we missed is the deal told me a long time ago, you really can't expense your way into a profit. You have to gross profit your way into a profit. And we look at close rates in dealerships, internet close rates, and we've had ourselves in the back. We get to 10, 12%. And what happens to those other 85%, 88%, 90% of the guests who inquire? Well, someone 2,000 miles away and they're 14 years old, they probably can't buy a car today. But the vast majority of them are real opportunities that we're not pursuing effectively, we're not pursuing frequently. My teams have to attempt to contact every opportunity 3 times a day for the first week, email, telephone, and text. They need to document those attempts in the CRM, and then the manager has to go behind them every time they actually get a two-way conversation before the conversation ends and get involved with the guest to solidify the appointment if they get one, to convert the appointment if they don't get an appointment, and to pull the appointment forward. So we go from 8% to 15% and 15 to 25%, wherever those numbers are. We don't make more money selling orange juice by putting lower wattage light bulbs in the factory. We make more money selling oranges by getting all the juice out of the orange. And we're very far. My business, my income is predicated on getting dealers to get more juice out of the orange. And I talked to a number of dealers, and I've never seen a dealer that gets all the juice out of the orange, myself included. But I think it requires really a relentless pursuit of every one of those drops, every penny in that opportunity, to go from a 2 or 3% net to sales store to an 8 or 10% net to sales store. Chasing the gross dollars is everything. And to that end, I think it's very important to make certain that we have pay plans that to our associates that correspond to what the desired result is. We pay finance managers 15% of all the gross. As an example, half the gross is finance profit. That's locked anyway, because more often than not, that's locked in on the showroom floor at the desk, rather than paying 15% across the board. How about paying them 25% on product profit and 5% on reserve? Because we're going to get the reserve anyway, and it's a gimme, and it's much more charge backable, and it doesn't offer any Cayman Islands reinsurance opportunities. Pay them on what we want them to sell.
100%. I mean, I worked in full disclosure for Nissan Motor Company, and my job was to train finance managers in all of Western Canada, 68 locations. And what shocked me the most wasn't the fact that they weren't trained to sell product, but how they were compensated. They were compensated on dealer reserve, on financing a car. That's part of their job anyway. But there wasn't a focus on how do I sell products, but more specifically, products that retain the customer. I said to him, it doesn't matter to me what products you sell. I work for Nissan, so obviously I want you to sell Nissan products, but don't you want to sell a product that the customer comes back to use that product? Wouldn't that be a good way to make sure that you can sell that customer again, especially if they use the product, versus products like life and disability, which, okay, the only reason they're using that is they're no longer with us. They're not a repeat customer at that point, not to beat up that product, but really think it through. And it was funny because I worked with a dealer who happened to be on the board of one of these reinsurer products. And he said, how come my salesman is selling more Nissan products now than this product? I said, because there's more money in it for him and for you, and it retains the customer. He says, But I didn't instruct him to do that. I said, I just trained him how to make more money and how to make you guys more money. And he just put 2 and 2 together. And the dealer was shocked that he didn't put that together himself because he was in a conflict of interest situation. What do you think, Peter?
Well, I'm going to go down a little bit of a different path as far as we're talking about ways to make additional money. One of the things that I've learned is dealers have a huge problem with reconditioning. Okay, and I spent a lot of time at the beginning of last year in service departments and looking at that. One of the 2 things I want to share with the dealers on this call, number one is you need to focus on reducing your time in the line. The faster you can get that car through reconditioning and back out on the line, that time frame is going to dramatically increase your bottom line profitability in used cars. And on the service side, I found a lot of dealers that when I went and reviewed their financial statements this year, they had a different labor rate for each internal as customer. If you're discounting your labor rate for your used car department and for reconditioning, I think that person is a mistake. It's still time. So you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. I think your rate should be consistent between reconditioning and internal work as to what you're doing for customer pay. So, if you're looking to balance the books a little bit, I think you need to consider analyzing what you're doing as far as your difference between the pay scales. But more importantly, you need to focus, because part of the reason why that is, if I'm a service manager and I've got cars coming in for reconditioning and I'm getting paid less for those than the ones that I'm getting paid for that are customer pay, where's my priority going to be? Okay.
Right.
So if you want to improve your time in the line, you got to look at how things are working internally.
100%.
I'd like to address that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Conversation, if I may.
Yeah.
And it's such a critical part of business. I think that dealerships lose so much money at the end of the month by writing off used cars, or wholesaling used cars that they couldn't retail. So I'll give you an example. I traded a truck today and I test drive it and I put it on the OBD and everything looks great. And I put all the money in at $20,000. It's a sharp truck. It goes into the service department. And they tell me that I need a new training for $6,500, $7,500. So I have to make a decision now. So I put in the training at $7,500, and now I'm way loaded in the vehicle, and I'm not gonna be able to sell it, or do I wholesale the vehicle, and I don't disclose it at the auction, and then it comes back 3 days later, and I end up eating that vehicle. So every time I acquire a car, whether I buy the car or whether I'm trading the car, I have to go up on a lift and have the technician look at the car, and I pay the tech and I pay service a half hour or an hour's worth of labor on that vehicle to inspect that vehicle. So I know, is this car brand new? And I put all the money in it out of the gate because I know I'm not going to get any recon expenses on it, or very limited. Or is this car a rat? And I don't want to trade it at all, or I want to trade it for $10,000 less than what the V-Auto might tell me it's worth, because it needs $10,000 worth of recon. And I save a lot of money by not making those mistakes. Store that I make my money on used cars again. A store that sells 150 used cars a month, I still be getting every trade and every purchase that they make off the street. Now, they can't do that at auction cars because they can't get them on the lift that quick unless they have a deal shield probably to return the cars, which I think is worth every penny. But that gets cars up on the lift, and the store that does 150 used cars a month will save $15,000 a month in unneeded recon costs. And as it relates to recon, I believe used car managers got to look at every single vehicle before you authorize any work on the vehicle. It's not the advisor, the technician, the service manager's decision what recon gets done to the car. It's the used car manager's a customer. He's got to approve it, or the GM or the dealer. And then I'll go a little bit deeper when it comes to used cars. If I don't have a CPO vehicle, I am not using OEM parts. I'm still charging for all the money. So instead of having a 44% margin, maybe I have a 70% margin on it. I agree with Peter 100% about the retail labor rate, where customers pay, used car pays. In the same context, if I got a brake special on used cars, on retail cars for customers, I'm going to give the brake special to used cars as well, because I don't want to charge them over what I charge retail customer. You know what? If I can hold 75% labor margin on new car on CP, I should be holding 75% margin or better on internal, and I should be holding more on parts because I'm going to be using non-OEM parts. And the used car manager needs to shake up the parts manager who doesn't want to do anything except press the button on the computer and get another Stellantis part or another GM part, and have them get on the phone with aftermarket, have them get on the phone with LKQ and see, can we put a part in this vehicle that costs $600 instead of $2,500. And as we progress further in technology, these OEM parts become more expensive.
100%. I mean, I think we need to do a show, Peter, on how you can recon different vehicles that are non-certified and squeeze more juice out of that orange in 2026. I mean, I think there's all kinds of shows on used cars, including I think it's Beaver Toyota, and they're selling a lot of used cars. But to your point, if I've got 200 to 300 or as many as 800 used cars, and I'm not doing the recalls on those cars, I'm not paying attention to recon costs, I'm not getting them ready to be sold, I'm maybe wholesaling the ones that I shouldn't be selling in the first place, and I'm really not looking at that inventory, I'm going to make less money. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to, especially if you got cars that are on your lot for 90 days. You've got to be making those decisions very, very quickly. Larry, go ahead.
Well, I've always been a fan, and I used it myself, of prospecting. Now, if you're in California, if you're in Ohio, if you're in Virginia, you're at a disadvantage because it's illegal to write a referral or a bird dog check. But if you think about it, is there any more effective way of not paying for your advertising until after the people have already bought the vehicle? And yet you'd be amazed at how many places I go into across the country that don't use the tool, that don't say at the end of each deal, hey, man, what a pleasure it was selling you a vehicle. If you know anybody half as nice as you, please let me know. Oh, and by the way, I know we're not just about the money, you and I, but there's 100, 200, whatever it is in it for you. And by the same token, you see people all over the place starting buy centers. Well, all good salespeople always like to ask, who else do you know that's looking to buy a car? What's wrong with asking who else do you know who wants to sell a car? Peter, you're going to laugh at this, at how basic this is, but it's worked tremendously for me and for people I've taught. If you get a shirt that says the company name, what's wrong with walking up to people in a parking lot saying, hey, excuse me, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I work at so-and-so. Your car is beautiful. Boy, if you ever decide to trade it in or even sell it, man, we would love to have it. What would you give me for it? I don't know, but our used car manager's a nerd. He sits in front of the computer. All I can tell you is everybody leaves happy with a big check or with a really good deal. There's not a couple more deals in there. So I think it's more effective. I think everybody in this panel will agree. The stupid mistake we make is we look outward to find more business. What about service? What about orphan files? There's so much business that we overlook right within the heart of the dealership. But to me, prospecting is always on. The reason I jumped off for a second, gentlemen, I wasn't being rude. I have a guy I did business with. He moved to another dealer. He wants to sign me up to do their work. How hard was that? Now, I guarantee you, Mike, if I called this dealer 37 times, they'd never take my call. But when somebody refers you or somebody says, hey, I work with this guy, it's the easiest thing in the world. Repeat referral can be 75%. What are you going to sell off the door? I don't care how good you are. 20%? So it's shooting at the right target. And to me, you want to make more money? You want to cut your expense? Get your folks to prospect. And if you have a referral fee, a bird dog, and you're not letting your people know, you should be taken out in the used car lot and beaten to death with a baseball bat. Because you're talking about an effective tool. Either Peter has a muscle spasm or he raised his hand. Go ahead, Peter.
So you're talking about referrals, and it's funny because you made me think of something. I was at a store earlier this year, and they were telling me about how they're getting used cars. I thought it was genius. They pay, and I'm not exactly sure what the number was, but they pay a bird dog to anyone on the staff who, when they see a car parked in the side of the road with a for sale sign on it, that they will stop and they'll say, hey, there's a really nice looking truck. My company would be interested in buying it. And literally prospects. So there's a couple of people at that dealership that was making, an extra $1,000 a month. I'm not exactly sure how much for a car, but simply by stopping in, getting the phone number, calling the person, and prospecting. Because you've got all these employees that are driving around. I mean, I was out the other day with my daughter showing her some houses in the area, and we came across a Jeep, and she wanted to stop, and she was in California. What, we're going to ship this Jeep to California for you? No. Because, I just want to look at it. But it was so some things, they see these cars out on the side of the road, back roads, and it's a great way to find used inventory. And you simply pay your staff little bird dog to take a second, pull over, write down the number, and make a phone call.
100%.
And the Jeep's good, Peter, because it's big enough to put 5 or 6 illegal immigrants and some drugs in the floorboard so she has gone back to California. And I'm not saying her, just maybe her as an administrator. Me and Mike love administrators as long as they actually administrate something. Just like managers that look in the dictionary and realize the definition of a manager is someone who manages, not someone who complains after the fact.
So, having said that, I mean, what would you not cut? I mean, I know there's a famous quote from Henry Ford, like stopping advertising is the definition of insanity or something like that, or it's like stopping your business. What would you not cut in 2026?
Training. And even if they don't use me, if you're not, I always quote the late great Zig Ziglar, training is like bathing. I advise it daily because it doesn't last. This AI thing, if it's a tool, it's awesome. If it's a crutch, you're in deep trouble.
Fantastic. Mike, what do you think? What should you not cut at any point in auto?
Staff.
Do you think dealers really are going to heavily cut staff, or do you think that that's just what they're saying right now?
It's the flavor of the day.
Understood.
Market's up one day, it's down the next day.
Yeah.
I'm firing people today, I'm hiring people tomorrow. I think you made a decision to hire them. You owe it to yourself to make them better at what they do. And you're replacing somebody because you don't need that headcount. Well, make that person productive so that person generates income. Are you paying that individual $6,000 or $3,000 a month minimum wage or $4,000 a month minimum wage, and that's a drag on you? Well, you know what? Turn that person into an associate that generates $50,000 a month in gross, and you're paying them $7,500 a month. They're making more money, and you're making money off them. The same with technicians who are unapplied labor or doing oil changes in the express lane, and you don't teach them how to upsell work in the lane.
Right.
They're getting cars with 70,000 miles on them. They're doing a $35 oil change. It costs them $60, and they have no idea how to inspect the car. You get them trained and teach them how to inspect the car. It's like $500 worth of work to give the advisor. The advisor pitches it. He closes his head of it, as an example.
Yep.
And now suddenly they go from making $15 an hour to on the clock to making $22 an hour flat rate at 50 hours a week. They're making more money, and you're making money on it. So, do I think that they are going to cut staff? Yeah, if the wind blows in the right direction, they'll cut staff. If it doesn't, they won't. But they need to focus on making their players better. Every one of those special forces guys was, when they got in the military, they had to teach them how to make their bed. They had to teach them how to load a weapon. They had to teach them how to swim. They had to teach them how to do all the stuff that the Delta Force need to do. These guys weren't born that way. They weren't born Delta Force guys. They were born 18-year-old kids that graduated high school, and they wanted to get a free college education from the Veterans Administration.
Mike,
Someone took them under their wing.
But they don't start every mission saying we're probably going to fail. And yet all car salespeople talk about all day is that there's no business. And then when a car pulls up, three geniuses decide the guy's not a buyer. Let's send the new guy out. So again, it's the mentality from the top.
Leadership. Yeah. That's training and leadership. If a manager is out front in the showroom when that customer drives up and he's talking to the associates about that customer is here with your money, and let's talk about how we are going to go get the money. How about instead of saying the salesman go up, how about the manager and the salesman go up together? And the manager leads by example. You don't have to do that too many times. Just the same way that when they give that guy a rifle the first time in basic training, then it's here's a rifle and shoot it. The drill sergeant probably takes the rifle first and fires a couple of times with it and shows them how to do it. The difference is that in the military, they can't go anywhere. They're stuck there for 3 years. So they kind of have to listen when you throw them in the stockade. In the car business, they quit. They go sell shoes again. The key is leading from the front. Great managers, which I don't even like the word manager, great leaders, great guys, great coaches, lead from the front. They show people how to do it over and over until they master it. Just like you teach a kid to ride a bike without training wheels. You don't just put them on the bike and go and let them crash. You don't leave the training wheels on forever. You run next to them and hold the handlebar with them. And eventually you let it go for a second and 2 seconds and 5 seconds. The next thing you know, he's driving a Kawasaki ZX-14 and you don't see him again for 2 years.
Yeah, I watched an interview of gentleman who runs one of the largest dealer groups in Canada, happens on U.S. locations, and they started buying U.S. locations, and all the people were worried they're going to lose their job. He goes, as long as you do it our way, like, we're fine with it. Like, we'll keep you around. And I think the reason is when dealerships get bought, in a lot of cases, they clear house. And that, I think, is a great example of don't cut staff just to cut staff. Maybe you cut the staff that aren't producing, but to your point, is that their fault or is that your fault? Peter?
Well, one of the things, and this is my big tip for all the dealers listening for the new year, you need to take a look at all of these fees that you're paying for all of these vendors for products that you're not using. I can tell you that if I were to go into your store and look at the fees that you're paying for vendors, I guarantee I would find at least 2, maybe as many as 5 different vendors that you're paying for. And you don't pay attention to them because they're small little line items on the statement. It might be $500, $1,500, $2,000 a month, but it's for some product or service that you're not using. And part of the problem with this, and why I'm finding so much of this when I talk to dealers, is this: we have a high turnover rate. You got a manager that comes in and he buys some widget, and it's a great widget that him and his team are using. But now he's gone to another store, the new manager comes in, he doesn't even know that you have that product or service. So if you want to save money going into this year, you need to do a review of what services you're paying for that you're not using and cut them off. And also then do an analysis of the services you are paying for. And if they're not working well, maybe it's time to pick up the phone and do a redirect. You kind of sometimes do a little course correction with that vendor. Say, hey, look, we haven't had good numbers with you for the last 90 days. What's going on? What can we do? I want somebody in here to do some training. My staff needs a refresher. Doing things like that will help improve the productivity, but you'll also be able to find out if you're paying for things that you don't use or that you're not using properly. And if you're not using them properly, you fix it or you get rid of it. So you can start saving. So instead of you start cutting staff, which everyone wants to do, that's an easy thing to do, or let's cut back expenses and advertising, which is the biggest mistake. Focus on things that you're not using that you're paying for, get rid of those things, and that'll help you start this year with a positive step.
So what questions, speaking of that with vendors, what questions should dealers be asking of those vendors? Go ahead, Mike.
Question for vendors is exactly what Peter was just talking about. Let's talk about the services you're providing and analyze the results that we're getting. I would bring the vendors in and sit in front of them and open up the platform and take a look at what kind of results I'm getting, what return on my investment. If I'm not getting return on investment, ask them to come up with a solution, because my solution is firing them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if you have a better solution, I want to hear that solution. But you probably got about 15 minutes to sell me on the solution, but you sold me on it 6 months ago. and for 6 months, I've been spending $690 a month on you. And what I do typically is we do payables meetings on a monthly basis with every department manager, saying we assign a payable to every individual department, and I have the manager sell me on why that payable, why that vendor is an important vendor to keep, and then I have them show me that I'm getting a return on my investment that's commensurate with the expectation. And if it's not, then we're going to get the vendor in and have them resell me on the service or the product, or if not, we terminate them.
Yep, exactly. Larry, I know you're a vendor, so what conversation are you having with dealers who are hiring or looking to get training on the vendor side?
I'm mostly making them understand the stuff we talked about at the beginning, how important it is to spend one-on-one time with your salespeople, how to have goals that make sense. I just never understood hollering at somebody when you didn't tell them what was expected or how to do it. It's a cliche, and I use it, and probably you guys use it. You're running your business within somebody else's business with no net service, with no debt service. So I just think it's a matter of empowering them to understand their business and what they're doing and how they're doing it, and how much money they can make and how easy they can make their life if they run their business like a business, rather than acting like it's your business and all the problems and efforts are on you.
Fantastic. Well, we're almost out of time, shockingly. I always like to use the
one last thought out.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
The other thing is I highly recommend the dealers, because technology is changing. You see a lot of technology. You may want to, as you go into 2026, some people on your team take a good look at your website. Websites have changed. The technology has changed dramatically. Unfortunately, the dealers have not been keeping up with the website technology, and that should be something they should also pay attention to, because at the end of the day, consumers are going to the web to shop for a car, and if your website is not doing a good job and providing a good user experience, you're going to miss that opportunity. So that would be something that, not looking to cut that, because you really can't get rid of your website, but you really need to analyze your website to make sure that it's firing on all 8 cylinders and providing a great experience to the consumers that are visiting it, because that will affect their sales.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at AI and search versus SEO and SEM search, or even organic search, I used to sell websites years ago to car dealers, so I know a little bit about this. The biggest change over the last 20 years is people used to go to 3 to 5 stores. Then it came down to about 1.2 stores. I would argue today that it's probably going to come down to the one store that has the car the customer wants in stock in the right color. And that may not include a website as the first thing. It may include an AI search where they're looking for a specific car in a specific color for a specific payment. And you only have that one opportunity, whether it be over phone, whether it be over a lead form, whether it be chat or video chat, to really capture that customer before they move on. And I think that's something that not only you have to look at your website, but you have to educate your staff who's handling customers to say, hey, we have a limited window to capture this customer because they're looking for a specific car in 2026 and they're doing it differently. And in a lot of cases, websites that car dealers have, maybe a dealer.com, Dealer Fire, Dealer Inspire, there's a whole bunch of different D2C, a bunch of different ones. A lot of those platforms are obsolete already. They're just not paying attention there. But the one that's a real takeaway for dealer websites is specials, whether it's a parts special, whether it's a sales special, whether it's a service special, whether it's a finance special. There's an opportunity to really differentiate yourself from the other dealers in the market, even with the same brand, by making that experience different from the get-go. Mike?
That's great. Yeah, I agree 100%. Your website's your digital showroom. If the website's not perfect, it's the same as having bringing a dog and having your dog relieve himself on the showroom. That's not really going to help. Hey, you got shit on your website, it's like you got shit on the showroom, and that's not going to help anybody. So we were very successful this weekend. I'm going to go back to Venezuela. And the special forces. We were very successful. Every one of those military personnel that went to Venezuela, everyone participated, treated that operation like a life and death opportunity, right? Every one of them. And so they came out with a flawless success militarily, whether someone agrees with it politically or not. The military success was flawless. If everybody in the dealership looks at every opportunity as life and death 100% of the time, think about how much more success we'll get both in controlling expense and maximizing gross and retaining guests relative to what we're doing right now. And once again, that starts at the top. If the dealer and the GM do not build that culture, that what we do is life and death, every single opportunity, every moment of truth, and we're not going to treat it that way. And the same thing, tell them I just left. Tell them I just left. If it was life and death, would you tell them they just left and they got the antidote and you ate the mercury? I don't think so. So we treat every opportunity that way, and we squeeze all the opportunity out of, maximize the opportunity every time. And we have 8 and 10% net to sales stores instead of 2 or 3% net to sales stores, and pat ourselves in the back to not losing money.
Thanks very much. Peter, final thought?
Final thought, I just want to thank everybody for their time today. I do want to let everybody know that next week our show is going to be pretty exciting. It's about AI and how it's changing way people buy cars in the future. So tune in next week. But as always, thanks everybody. Thank you all the people joining us today. Hopefully you got some great information out of the show. And thank you for our guests. And have a great week.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And Larry, Wednesday night, we're doing Burn the Boats. So if you're out for lethal sales, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. East, we're doing Burn the Boats. Go ahead, Larry, final thoughts.
Well, I'm going to quote my own book, Inner Moron Demons. If you want to get rich, act like you're broke. And if you want to go broke, act like you're rich. Mike's right. Peter's right. Every opportunity should be like life or death, because you don't know how many deals you can extract out of the deal if you treat the people properly.
Thanks for that. Thanks very much for everybody. and have yourself a great week. All the best for 2026. We'll see you at NADA. We'll be at the NUMA booth next to CDK. Bye for now.